Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a film that's so much more than a classic. It's a piece of our history. We're going to dive into the chaotic, improbable, and frankly, accidental story of how Casablanca ever got made at all.
You hear that line and boom, you can just picture Humphrey Bogart's face, can't you? It's just one of the endless, unforgettable lines from this 1942 classic that have become, just part of how we talk. Looking back now, you'd think its legendary status was a sure thing. But here's the crazy part. Its creation was pure chaos. We're talking last-minute decisions, a ton of luck, and absolutely no certainty. It was a beautiful mess.
All right, let's jump in. First up, an immortal Hollywood myth. We've got to start here just to really set the stage for how iconic this film became. I mean, to this day, it's considered the gold standard of Hollywood's golden age. And this wasn't some kind of later rediscovery. Nope. It won the Oscar for Best Picture right out of the gate in 1943. It was a legend from the start. So what's with the number 6? Well, that's how many quotes from Casablanca are on the American Film Institute's list of the top 100 movie quotes of all time. 6! That is more than any other movie, period. But here's the big paradox. Even famous critics like Umberto Eco pointed out that if you just look at it on paper, the movie's kind of a mashup of cliches. And honestly, no one involved in making it thought it was going to be a hit. To them, it was just another film on the studio assembly line. Okay, let's move on to our first big clue in this mystery. Section 2, this song's second chance. Yeah, you know what song we're talking about. So that song, As Time Goes By, the one that basically is Casablanca, it wasn't even written for the movie, not even close. It was an 11-year-old tune from an old, unproduced play the movie was based on. And get this, the film's composer, the legendary Max Steiner. We're talking the guy who scored King Kong and Gone with the Wind. He absolutely hated it. He wanted it gone. The only reason it stayed? Ingrid Bergman had already chopped her hair for her next movie, so they couldn't reshoot the scenes. That's right, a haircut saved one of the most famous songs in cinema history. And here's another thing. The version we all know and love actually cuts out the song's original intro. The original lyrics were all about modern anxiety, even mentioning Mr. Einstein's theory. Can you imagine? The filmmakers just sliced that right off and got straight to the timeless romantic stuff. Which brings us to Section 3, Perfection Born from Chaos. Because if you think the song's story is wild, oh, just wait till you hear about the script. And I am not exaggerating here. When they started filming on May 25th, 1942, they only had the first half of the script. Half. They were literally figuring out the rest of the story as they were shooting it. You had this whole team of writers frantically working on it during filming. They were handing out new pages, new scenes, sometimes just hours before the cameras rolled. The producer, Hal Wallace, even had to step in and write the movie's final iconic line himself. This meant nobody knew how the movie was going to end, not even the stars. Ingrid Bergman famously kept asking who her character, Ilsa, was really in love with, Rick or Laszlo. And the writers just said, we don't know yet, so just play it somewhere in the middle. Now you'd think this would be a total disaster, but it actually became the film's secret weapon. That confusion you see in Bergman's eyes? That torn feeling? It's completely real, and it's what makes her performance absolutely mesmerizing. All right, on to Section 4, More Than a Love Story. Because you really can't understand this movie's magic without understanding that it was made in the shadow of World War II. Let's be clear, at its core, Casablanca was designed as wartime propaganda. The US government was literally reviewing scripts to make sure they'd help the war effort. This movie was built to convince a very hesitant American public that this was a fight worth fighting. And this is where fiction and reality just completely blurred. That desperation you see on the faces of the refugee characters, for many of them, it wasn't acting. They were actual refugees who had escaped Nazi Europe. The guy playing the main villain, Major Strasser, was himself a German who had to flee the Nazis. The main cast was pretty much a microcosm of the whole global conflict. I mean, of all the credited actors, only 3 were actually born in the US. The rest were this international mix, really reflecting the stakes of the war. And you feel this most in that incredible duel of the anthem scene. When everyone in the cafe stands up and drowns out the Nazis by singing La Marseillaise, well, the emotion on set was apparently overwhelming. Those weren't just actors singing. They were real people with real pain, and their tears were real. It's just Powerful stuff. So, finally, let's bring it all home. Section 5. Why we'll always have Casablanca. How on earth did all these accidents, all this chaos, create something so timeless? Well, against all odds, it just worked. That chaotic writing process somehow churned out some of the most memorable dialogue ever written. The movie is just a relentless barrage of perfect, unforgettable lines. It gave a wartime audience exactly what they needed, a story about a hard-boiled cynic who learns to believe in something again. Rick's final choice, giving up the love of his life for a cause bigger than himself, was exactly the message people needed to hear. It captured a moment in time perfectly, but somehow became universal. In the end, Casablanca wasn't born from some grand, perfect vision. It was lightning in a bottle, a magnificent accident forged in the heat of the studio system and the urgency of war. And it just goes to show you that sometimes true genius isn't planned. It's just found, right in the middle of all the chaos.